Well, wonderful. I want to thank you all for coming here for this session on unleashing the drone economy. I'm Timothy Reuter, head of drones in tomorrow's airspace at the World Economic Forum. And we wanted to bring this group together at the World Economic Forum on Africa because we really see Africa leading in the application of drone technology and showing the rest of the world what's possible with drones in the fourth industrial revolution. Africa also has some unique challenges that drones can help address with a current infrastructure gap of over $50 billion needed in investment that's not yet being addressed, and only a third of the population living within 2 kilometers of all-weather roads. So there's a real opportunity for drones to be particularly transformational in the African context, and that may be why we're seeing Africa be the first continent to really allow many of these applications. I'm very pleased to be joined by our distinguished panel here. First, to my left, we have Conor French, who is General Counsel of Zipline. Then we have Valerie Guarnieri, and I apologize if I butchered your name, who is Assistant Executive Director of the World Food Program, which is a United Nations agency. I'm also happy to welcome Catherine Smith, who is the Managing Director of SAP Africa. We're also joined by Barry Kashambo, who is the Regional Director for Eastern and Southern Africa for the International Civil Aviation Organization, which is a UN specialized technical agency. And then to my right, we have Cheng, who is the head of JDX, which is the research and development division of JD.com, the largest e-commerce platform in China. So thank you all for joining us. And so, Conor, I want to start with you. Zipline is the only company that is currently operating a national scale drone delivery network. And I'd love to have you talk about your experiences so far in Africa.
Of course. You know, I did want to explain why you have to sit here and listen to a lawyer. As General Counsel, I also look after the regulatory and safety portfolio. So working a lot with the regulators and policymakers in the space. To sort of bring it back a little bit of history on the organization and what we're doing, in 2016, we launched a medical delivery logistics service in Rwanda, and we did it in partnership with the government of Rwanda, and specifically the Ministry of Health. And we worked with them initially just delivering blood products to remote health facilities, and have added a number of medications. You know, as of this morning, between Rwanda and Ghana, where we're also operating, we've done about 19,472 deliveries. And I would stress that's without any injuries to people or property. So that's a larger body of work. And again, you know, when contrasted with manned aviation, not a huge amount, but we've shown, again, being able to demonstrate, you know, at national scale, the ability to really improve health outcomes and access for the population. We launched in April in Ghana and are, you know, currently can serve around 12 million people, but should be around 20 million in 6 months. And we will, again, be building out these distribution networks, which start really with a distribution center that has about a 20,000 square kilometer radius. And we're able to bring up health facilities sort of online that we can then, they sort of can place an order either through WhatsApp or through an iPad, and that goes to us. We will update them that we're working on the order, and then we'll deliver that medicine to them within a much faster time than, for instance, the normal modes of motorcycle or car would allow. You know, in Rwanda, we've about a third of all the deliveries we've done have been in emergency circumstances. So when someone's life is on the line, the main area we've been able to help in that context is with maternal mortality due to postpartum hemorrhaging by being able to get blood transfusion there very quickly. So it's really exciting to see, again, as we've been able to work towards what our overall mission is, which is to provide every human on Earth with instant access to vital medicines.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing that experience. And Valerie, I'd love to have you talk a little bit about the humanitarian applications that the World Food Program has been working on in Africa. I know WFP leads the United Nations overall in many ways in looking at how drones can be integrated across the humanitarian portfolio.
Thank you, Tim. We've seen a lot of exciting potential and usages of drones in our work. Just to set the context, the World Food Program is operating in 80 countries, reaching 90 million people with food assistance on an annual basis. And our work, in order to do that, takes us to the most remote corners of countries, including on the continent. So we're often really trying to find those last mile solutions to make sure that we can reach people with the assistance they need. And in this context, drones have shown clear potential in three ways. One, in terms of imagery, and the images need to assess needs and respond to them appropriately. Two, in terms of connectivity and making sure that we have the connection that we need. We all need to be online all the time, including in the humanitarian world. And then three, in terms of delivery and being able to reach people along the line of the Zipline example. So on the imagery side, we've seen how we can use drones to more quickly and more efficiently get the data necessary to understand people's access to food. And here it's important to know how much crops were planted. And when you're looking at large crops, you can use satellite imagery pretty effectively. But when you're looking at really small subsistence agriculture, remote agriculture, you need to use those enumerators, those workers on the ground to collect the data. And we found through a few applications that in Malawi, that by using drones, we can collect information that would otherwise need to come from people sort of, walking by foot covering area to collect that important information. On the disaster side, when there's a cyclone like Idai in Mozambique, you have just infrastructure that was destroyed. Transport infrastructure, service infrastructure. We didn't have the helicopters in the initial days to get the information necessary, and we were able to use drones to very quickly collect information on which roads were down, which bridges were down, and that allowed us to very quickly prioritize transport routes and reach people. So that's been very important, and we want to be building on that for other disaster responses on the continent. In terms of connectivity, there's some very initial use to see whether instead of radio towers or when radio towers are down, whether you can use airborne drones for connectivity. And then in terms of delivery, and this is an area that we're really quite excited about. We're exploring with a particular company the opportunity for 1.5 metric ton storage capacity delivery by drones, which would be really important in those areas where with trucks we're not able, and with boats, we're not able to reach people. And I take an example like South Sudan, where much of our food is delivered by airdrops. Here we could see the potential of using drones to deliver food assistance to needy populations.
Wonderful. Thank you for sharing those experiences. And so we've been talking about a lot how drones are being used to support people in remote areas. Kathy, I know SAP has been working on some exciting applications around the use of drones to manage and protect wildlife, and I'd love to hear about your experiences with that.
Excellent. Thank you, Tim. And I should start by saying SAP does it in collaboration with several partners because, the reality of dealing with a challenging problem like conservation, I don't believe that there's one organization that's the answer to every single problem. And what we have been working on, launched at the end of last year, is a program called Elephants, Rhino, and People. Because, this is about society and conservation together. And working with several partners, we've created our SAP platform is being used to facilitate the gathering of information around both rhinos and elephants, which are hugely at risk. In fact, the stats right now that says on a daily basis, we lose on average 3 rhinos per day to poaching and almost 2 to 4 elephants per hour. So it's becoming a massive issue that not only in terms of saving the planet and making sure we have the wildlife for generations to come, but it's also impacting villages that have a dependency on wildlife for their own economic viability. So the importance of us, first of all, understanding why to find a solution was really important. And then the platform we use is not just to gather data, but also because it's a very dangerous game when you are dealing with poachers. You need to be able to anticipate that if there is an unknown human being walking in the area, that you can validate whether it's a risk, whether it's a threat or not. So the use of drones that we have in this pilot, we've piloting it in 10 game farms across the southern part of the continent. We're using the drones to go in and validate and verify whether it's a threat or not. Send the information back onto a mobile phone so the poachers know, the game rangers know how to react. What that does is several things. First of all, the game rangers are better prepared because they know what to anticipate when they go to the area where an alert has been detected. Secondly, the best thing about what we've been experiencing so far is that it's acted as a massive detractor. Because what we've also learned is that many of the poachers do reconnaissance. So they go into different areas, going in and checking out, how the lay of the land works, how is the park responding to any unnatural detections that's happening. And when they see a drone flying in or they see a game ranger coming in, on the basis of just what is going on here, whilst they're doing a reconnaissance, it acts as a detractor, which is the best result because then nobody gets impacted. But when an actual attack is happening or when it's about to happen, the drone information is sent back onto the SAP platform. And we're able to use the data to, as I said, inform the rangers on how to react, but also to gather enough information to determine trends and track and be able to predict and proactively manage the environment more clearly. And working with drones, we use a single wing drone because it has almost 3 hours of lifespan to fly across because the ranges we're talking about are quite significant. And we've had to figure out how to deal with challenges around weather and being proactive. And one of the key challenges we've experienced is the lack of qualified drone pilots. And so we've had to automate a lot of the drone launches. And we've used third-party partners as well, using it on our platform to be able to launch and to fly the drones, do the detection, send the information back so that we can handle a more seamless and integrated program.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Cool.
And Barry, I know ICAO supports and oversees regulators around the world as they develop new approaches to managing drones. And I'd love to get your take on what ICAO is doing and what you think needs to be done to create an enabling environment for this technology to reach its full potential.
Thanks very much, Timothy. First of all, let me express my appreciation for bringing together this forum. From the conversation of the 3 panelists that have, you can see how diverse the use of, I want to change the name,
Yeah.
of unmanned aircraft systems. Because drones is one component of unmanned aircraft systems. And this is one of the challenges that we have. You can see, talking about health sector, talking about agriculture and relief, talking about poaching and wildlife. Now, the one single most transformation of aviation that has ever happened since ICAO has been, this year we're celebrating 75 years, is the unmanned aircraft systems. It's revolutionized the operation of aviation next to the jet engine revolution. Everything is changing. Within the next 10 to 20 years, most of the operations to do with the airspace will be around the unmanned aircraft systems. And I emphasize on the word unmanned aircraft systems because this drones has become a generic name for unmanned aircraft systems. What my sister was talking about, what the 1.5 ton, okay, it's a 2-ton operation, is not a drone operation. It's a remote pilot aircraft system operation, doing international operations. So ICAO is looking at how do we guide, like we have always done traditionally, how do we guide safe, secure, efficient operation of an aircraft or a machine, because this is an aircraft actually, into the airspace integrated with other aircraft that are operating there, including commercial aircraft operations. The challenge that we have as guidance, as providing guidance to the regulators, is that the industry is moving faster than the regulators and ICAO itself. Out there, the manufacturers, they are pushing out millions of machines, drones, whatever you want to call them, AR. The young people or innovators, if you want to call them, the innovation systems are going faster than the regulators. To be able to push out a standard from ICAO to which regulations are best takes a period of about 2 years. You have to discuss it, then it goes to the Council, it goes to the Air Navigation Commission. The industry requires to have a much faster regulation regime. So the industry is moving faster than us. The evolution of the aircraft, unmanned aircraft system is moving faster than the operations themselves. So we have to move at a pace at which this technology change is going. So that's one of the biggest challenges. However, we will have to make sure that the operating environment of the unmanned aircraft systems is within the scope where safety and security is not compromised. That's very, very important. So our role is to make sure that we put a platform together, we create a forum where this conversation is digested, we engage all the stakeholders to ensure that we develop a regulatory regime that will be followed by all interested parties for safe operations of unmanned aircraft systems.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And my understanding is that Rwanda is actually the first country where the number of unmanned flights that are managed each day exceeds the number of manned flights, which is a great example of the challenge that governments face in the fourth industrial revolution during this transition. And lastly, I want to turn to you, Hui, to talk a bit about the experience that JD is having in China, where it's one of a handful of operators that is distributing products over hundreds of square kilometers using drones. So I'd love to have you share what that experience has been so far.
Yeah, thank you, Tim. One thing I want to first introduce JD.com if people are not very familiar with the company. JD is an e-commerce company, but actually is the largest retailer in China, both online and offline. And also another very unique part of JD is JD actually operating a nationwide logistic delivery network down to the last mile. So that meant from the JD employee going to deliver the product people order to their doorsteps to ensure the qualities of the delivery. So to give you a little bit idea what the scale of the operation is, so 2 years ago in 2017, we have a promotion period called 618 promotion period. And during that, we totally sold more than 700 million items. So that means 2 items per person in the United States, 1 in Europe, and even in Africa with 1.2 billion people, that means at least 1 per household. And if you have more people in the household, you'll get more. Although this is great for the company, it also has tremendous challenge for logistics, and especially down to last miles. So that's why we have more than 600 warehouses, more than 6,000 delivery stations, and it covers 99% of the 1.3 billion people in China. And also, on top of that, we actually can deliver 90% orders, either the same day or the next day. So, and that is we started about 10 years ago. So it's a tremendous feat that's enjoyed by a lot of our customers in China. However, then the question is why we use drones, right? So for the 99% of population, and also in order to achieve some of the efficiencies, most of the efficiency we're talking about is enjoyed in mega cities, where people are very close by together. We can deliver in very efficient ways. And in the remote villages, especially challenged by terrains, that will present significant barrier in both delivery time and cost. And also those economic challenged areas that they generally have less the odor than mega cities in the areas. So to solve this type of problem, we started our drone program in June 2016, pilot program. And so far, we're very glad we already delivered more than 35,000 flights. We already have more than 35,000 flights. And there's quite interesting. One thing is in China, although in villages, rural area, they are very challenged, including economic conditions and the terrain constraints for vehicle delivery and other aspects. Actually, in China, the mobile penetration is quite fascinating. So they can actually order product online. And when that's ordered, our delivery station going to use drones to send it to them. But you can imagine in a rural village, drone is not only, it's a novelty to anyone, including in villages. So to make sure it's safe and also efficient, we actually have employed village ambassadors that will help on the other end to receive the drone. The drone will land and they will take the packages and the last mile to distribute it into the village. And at the same time, this afford us, we can land, that's afford us reverse delivery as well. So for things that they need to be sent out, we can also using the same drones to bring it back to our delivery station to include this reverse. That will help their economic conditions as well. So we're really excited to have the opportunity to share the experience in Africa. So, and thank you very much for team for inviting us.
Thank you for sharing that. And Conor, I want to now turn back to you. You talked a bit about your experience in Rwanda, now taking that to a larger area in Ghana. And what has Zipline learned so far that might be lessons that can be used by other governments, other companies, or others who are just looking at this problem set?
Yeah, definitely. And I think I'll sort of take it in the spirit of sort of the broadest possible response. But I think it's given us a lot of insight into, I guess, what sort of I think that the future, the power and potential of our industry sort of depend on. And I'd say it's sort of three things. Interoperability and a regulatory framework. It's sort of true integration on manned and unmanned aircraft systems.
Thank you.
And then third, it's capturing societal benefit. So interoperability, there's the aviation regulatory community is very fond of this mantra of crawl, walk, run. And I would say sort of in Rwanda and Ghana, we've crawled, we've walked, and we're beginning to run. And I'd like to see other regulators and ICAO really listen to and learn from the Rwanda Civil Aviation Authority, the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority, and the other regulators to capitalize on that experience and work towards sort of a harmonized regulatory framework that would allow us to capitalize again on the fact that we have national scale deliveries in Rwanda. When it comes to sort of true integration, so tomorrow's airspace is not going to be segregated if we're going to capture, again, the power and potential. So while I admire a lot of the drone corridor type projects, I worry that they have us caught in a sort of eternal pilot phase of projects generally. And that's a really difficult place for non-large incumbent organizations to operate because you end up having no horizon for commercial viability. And so you're trying to invest after something that's going to make no commercial sense until you get there. And so I think we really threaten the innovation ecosystem the longer we continue to call everything a pilot project. Sort of third, the capturing social benefit or societal benefit. This one, I really believe we risk in our industry trying to solve the wrong problem. Don't get me wrong, safety is paramount when it comes to aviation, but I think that a myopia towards safety is going to miss out on very real social benefits. It sidesteps, again, for example, the risk to a person who is denied access to the blood transfusion they need to save their life. It risks the child who's bitten by a snake being denied access to the antivenom that they could have if the technology was permitted to deliver it to them. So I think we need to empower our policymakers and regulators to think more holistically about risk and not just the sort of every conceivable risk you could associate with a drone and think about the risks to society without them.
Wonderful, thank you. And actually, continuing on this vein of moving from pilot to scale, Valerie, you talked a lot about some pilots that the World Food Program has undertaken and that you've seen value from those pilots. How are you thinking about taking that and rolling it out across your entire organization if you believe that is the right approach to take?
Well, in the humanitarian world, we're always looking for efficiencies. There's never enough resources
to do the work that needs to be done. And we've seen very clearly in pilots the efficiency that can be gained from using drones to get that access to the information that you need to plan and implement humanitarian response activities more effectively. So in that space, we're ready to go to scale pending some of the regulatory issues that become very important in making sure that we're operating within a national space that allows us to protect data that's collected, as well as the safety of the machinery itself vis-a-vis the population. So there it's quite clear that there's opportunities to go to scale. On the delivery side, we're fundamentally looking at as a sort of a last resort option. I mean, just looking at the cost issues there, 1.5 metric tons in a drone is basically 300 bags of rice. Let's say if you're talking about or maize, or if you're talking about cereals. You can deliver 30 metric tons or 900 bags, I think it would be, on a truck. So it's always going to be more effective to deliver over land. Planes themselves, a big Aleutian aircraft like we use in South Sudan, deliver 30 tons as well in an aircraft. So drones are never going to be the first resort food delivery. They can be the option for lower weight cargo, and they do have potential as a last resort delivery option on the humanitarian space. But I would stress the issue of regulation as being very important, not just on the safety side, but also in terms of data protection and privacy.
And
I just wanted to touch on what you've just mentioned, on the statement saying that drones, if I may use your word, or aircraft, are never going to be a fast solution. I would like to disagree with that. If you look at the evolution, we have moved from less 330 grams of weight to 1.5. What stops unmanned aircraft system from having 100 tons of cargo in the next 20 years? Nothing. The technology is moving so fast that you can actually replace the Aleutians, which are having 300 tons with unmanned aircraft systems. So I think as we do the innovation, we need to look further than today, further than tomorrow. We are looking at the next 20 years. Nothing is going to stop the innovation from having large unmanned aircraft systems delivering huge, huge tons of cargo. That's why we're going, and I don't think we're going to be stopped from there.
No, that's a great point, and one of the largest challenges for people trying to create new policy around this, because as soon as you've developed one policy, the technology has evolved. On that note, I'd actually like to open things a bit up to the audience. I don't know if there's any questions that audience members have that they'd like to address to this group.
I had one item I wanted to comment to supplement what you mentioned. You mentioned one important word, harmonization. If you look around this room, we might be in Africa, we might be count 15 different regulations. Kenya has development regulations, Rwanda regulations, Uganda regulations, South Africa regulations. All of them are different. And each one of them can convince you that their regulations are the best. So we need to have
You're going to start a task force for us to harmonize?
Yes. We need to have.
I'm ready.
We need to have harmonized regulations. Otherwise, we're going to continue operating in silos.
And I'll just take that opportunity actually to make a short plug, which is the World Bank and government of Rwanda have recently launched an African drone forum, where the World Economic Forum will be facilitating some discussions amongst regulators to address this question that you've raised, at what are some harmonized approaches that would encourage interoperability and really advance things on a continent-wide scale in terms of what's possible. So I think I see some questions from the audience. Could I ask whoever is managing the microphone to provide that? Or perhaps I can do so as well. Please.
Thank you, Timothy, for getting your panelists who are very knowledgeable. They have really managed to shed some light in various different disciplines and backgrounds in terms of UAS, that's unmanned aircraft systems. But I want to just say something. Unmanned aircraft systems have been there for many years, but they were predominantly used by the military. The benefits of UAS unmanned aircraft systems cannot be overemphasized. Right from research, medical supplies, name it, to agriculture, security, etc. Even wildlife. But we really need to be very careful. We already have an efficient air transport system working for both cargo and for commercial air transport. The director of ICAO in the ISAF region put it very clearly. What stops 100 tons of, or rather volumes and large volumes of cargo moving from one place to another? Why aren't we looking at international regulations whereby we'll be crossing borders like we do in air transport? Right now, we cannot really underlook what is already being done in terms of the manufacturers, in terms of what World Food Program, United Nations organizations, who are actually reaching out to people in remote areas, supplying them with medical etc. But we need to categorize the US, right from drones to RPAS to US itself. Because we have recreationals, we have toys, etc. We cannot be able to, there are millions and thousands of millions of recreational toys in terms of drones, etc. We need to start categorizing. And as you know, even if we got the regulations, the terrorists themselves have access to these items. There's no way they're going to register drones or US, for lack of a better way of looking at the terrorists. So we need to actually allow, whereas it's an innovation that is long overdue in terms of regulations, I do appreciate that ICAO and other regulators were slow and the industry is well ahead of us. But we need to be cautious of the traveling public by air, that indeed we do not jeopardize air transport, because we must find a way of having unmanned traffic into the main air traffic management system. And unless until we do that, unless we categorize the types of unmanned aircraft systems, it's going to be almost impossible to integrate them. There's no option. We must not segregate them. We must accommodate them. But we must accommodate them in such a manner that we do not endanger already the air transport that is safe for the traveling public. Thank you.
Thank you. Just so you know, that was Nathan Ogenshe, who is a regulator from Kenya. So thank you for sharing that perspective. Going forward, if I could just ask that people introduce themselves and their organization, as well as sort of provide a brief question. And I'll go to you.
Thank you, Tim. My name's Helmer Preuss from Alliance News. A question for Valerie. In terms of the drones that you used for data, can you say how many drones you used for Cyclone Idai?
Thank you.
That's for you, for Valerie.
I think the question...
In terms of trying to see which roads were out of etc. Did you use one drone or 5 or 10?
Yeah. I don't have the precise numbers, but I know we had a set of drones or unmanned systems that were at our disposal that we were able to deploy in different directions in order to collect the information necessary.
And Tiam, would you like to ask a question?
Thank you very much, Timothy. My name is Tiamio Raji. I'm from Senegal, and I'm part of the Flying Labs Network. Flying Labs Network is a network of local expertise in Africa, supporting and advocating on the drones, the technology used, and building capacity. First of all, let me share my personal feelings. How many French-speaking people are in this room, if I may ask? French-speaking. We are not many. That is one barrier to what we are talking about here. And it's important for us to also, when coming up with rules and regulations and inviting panelists and supporting, we need to consider that. Now, that said, I have quick suggestions to various partners and participants in this room. The first one to government officials who are in this room. Please consider drones as a new technology, allowing to create jobs, okay, to create jobs on the continent. And regulations, fees. I know some countries have regulations and they have fees that people pay. Please, drones should not be considered as another income source for governments, please. The last one I'm going to speak to about government officials if they're in this room is to, I think we spoke about it earlier, is harmonizing the regulations. It's important. To the industry, invest in capacity building. Very important. Allow the technology to be available, easily available, because it's going to happen. And support the sustainability use of the technology. That is my message. Thank you.
Thank you for that. And actually, on the subject of job creation, which frequently comes up, I don't know if you could speak from JD's perspective about some of the new jobs that have been created as you've deployed this new emerging technology and what others might learn from that experience.
Yeah, so I think that's a really great question. One thing is, as I mentioned before, for the drone operations, we already employ village ambassadors who help us on the other end to help managing the drone delivery, the last mile, and also help to organize, including like change batteries and routine maintenance. And also we realize the need also for trained professionals to do the drone operation. Actually, we began to have a UAS or drone maintenance and operator schools. So people we began to offer classes and train students to do that. So besides this, I also want to mention one thing is how the operations, like commercial operations, really plans and execute the drone business. So that's very different from hobbyists to play with drones. Actually, for every route, every delivery route, we first will use the maps to make sure that route is safe in the sense that have least impact if the very unlikely chance something happens. So this gives us a first level of safety. And the second is we definitely utmost obey all the regulations and rules, and we report all the flight plans, each daily operations to the appropriate authorities. We have a lot of support, tremendous support from both local and all-level government in China to support this. So that's I hope can also give some more information into the whole air control environment, that what are drones are operated by commercial operators are operating and where are they, what status they are. And also definitely we check whether it's like Valerie mentioned to do all these operations to make sure that this part is safe. So I'm very glad to share for all the flights we have we have a very good 100% safety record for all the operations.
Wonderful, thank you for sharing that. And I think it's a great example of how new job categories and training opportunities are being created through this emerging technology. I think we have time for maybe one, possibly two final questions. If anybody else wants to.
I just wanted to jump in on that because it's been a really important to me personally. Part of what we've been able to do at Zipline is, we have controllers, flight operators, fulfillment operators, entire distribution center teams. Right now, our Zipline Academy, which is where we do sort of a very rigorous training that we develop with our Rwandan regulator, is located in Muhanga, which is about an hour outside of Kigali. So our entire Ghanaian flight teams have been to Rwanda to train there. We have, basically 2 distribution centers an hour each side of Kigali, in Kayonza and in Muhanga. And then in Ghana, we have one outside of Accra that's functioning at Omanako, and then we'll have 3 more by January 2020. So if anyone in the room happens to be in Rwanda or Ghana, you should definitely come out and see our our distribution centers. They're the great bustling places. Our first cohort in Ghana actually was majority female, which was exciting. It's a lot of sort of youth jobs. So it's been a really exciting sort of way to serve the community that we're serving another.
Yeah. Thanks, and I think there's a great example here. We've got both opportunities for large companies that are creating new jobs and a lot of organizations like the Flying Labs that are creating smaller entrepreneurial outfits of service providers. So there's many opportunities for new forms of industrialization in Africa through drone businesses. I think if we have time for one final question, if anybody wants to ask it. And I see back here.
It needs to be gender sensitive, huh?
Well, I'm sorry.
Here, we have Jen.
Hello, my name is Isabel, and I'm glad to be fulfilling your gender quota today. I'm from Rwanda Airports Company, and so I'm speaking on behalf of the air navigation service provider. I just wanted to thank the panel today for the really insightful discussions. I think from the perspective of Rwanda's experience and the future vision that we have, we are really mindful of the emerging technologies and the unpredictability of the future and how that future will impact citizens in the future and the youth. So for us, what we're really interested in is looking at more of an R&D approach where you don't have all of the answers yet, but you need to have the right people at the table to discuss the risks and the opportunities that are present. And just to add to what you were saying, Timothy, is we are interested in having people come and contribute to our experience, which points to the event that you were talking about. We're having the African Drone Forum in February 2020, and we really want industry to come together with the regulator and the policymakers and kind of plug in the gaps that we can so far, and we can see how much more we can push the envelope without necessarily increasing the risk or pretending to have figured out all the gaps, especially when it comes to the UTM, the traffic management for UAS systems. That one is really a technological problem or puzzle that no one has all the pieces to. So I encourage everyone in this room today to join us in Rwanda to try and answer that question, and to all the stakeholders such as yourself, the World Food Program, the tech companies, the Ziplines, the JDs of the world, to flip the problem on its head and have people come together as opposed to compete and try and cross a finish line that no one can see as of today. So that was just my contribution. Thank you.
Wonderful. I think that's actually the perfect thought to close on here. We've really covered a lot of territory during this discussion, talking about how drones are saving lives here today. It's not something that's just going to happen tomorrow, as well as protecting wildlife, and the need to work collaboratively between government, industry, civil society, and all stakeholders to develop new approaches to governing this so that they can be integrated in a way that doesn't reduce the safety of the existing systems. as well as the opportunities to create new jobs and economic growth through this opportunity. So I want to thank all of you for coming here to be part of this conversation, as well as the audience for all of your contributions as well. So thank you very much.